There's a unique kind of excitement that comes with planning a surprise for the person you love. It's the anticipation of seeing their face light up, the warmth of knowing you're about to make their day. That's what I told myself as I stepped into the towering glass building where my wife, Charlotte Hayes, worked. She had been pulling late nights at the office all week, her voice weary when we spoke on the phone, always promising she'd be home soon. I wanted to do something sweet, bring her a coffee, steal a few minutes of her time, remind her that no matter how busy life got, we still had us. The receptionist barely glanced at me when I walked in. "Mr. Hayes," she said with a polite but distracted smile. "Charlotte's upstairs in her office. Should I let her know you're here?" "No need," I replied, holding up the tray of coffee. "It's a surprise." I took the elevator up to the 12th floor, humming softly to myself. The hallways were quiet, the glow of overhead lights casting long shadows as I approached Charlotte's office. Her door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to hear muffled voices. I hesitated, suddenly feeling like an intruder. Maybe she was on a call or reviewing something important. But then I heard it, a soft, breathless laugh. Hers. I pushed the door open a little further, just enough to see inside. And my world stopped. Charlotte wasn't alone. She was there, on top of her desk, her blouse half unbuttoned, her golden hair cascading over her bare shoulders. Her hands clutched at the arms of a man pressing into her. A man with silver-streaked hair, a tailored suit, and a face lined with years of authority. Her boss. They were tangled together, lost in each other, their bodies moving in perfect sync. My wife, my Charlotte, was moaning his name, her voice thick with something I had never heard her use with me. The coffee tray slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a sharp crack. They both froze. Charlotte turned, her flushed face morphing into something unreadable when she saw me standing there, my whole body shaking. "Benjamin," she whispered, as if saying my name could undo what she had just done. But it was too late. I had already seen everything. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the slow drip of spilled coffee pooling onto the carpet. Charlotte was still perched on the desk, her bare legs dangling over the edge. Her blouse was hastily pulled shut, but she hadn't buttoned it yet. The man, her boss, was still between her thighs, his face frozen in a mixture of shock and irritation, as if I were the one who had just ruined his night. The heat in my chest turned ice cold. "Benjamin," Charlotte said again, her voice barely above a whisper. Her wide green eyes darted between me and the man still pressed against her. This isn't what it looks like." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh, my fists trembling at my sides. Asterisk not what it looks like. Asterisk. My voice came out raw, jagged. "Then by all means, Charlotte, tell me, what exactly is it?" Her lips parted, but no words came. What could she possibly say? That it was a mistake? That she had tripped and accidentally landed on her boss's lap? The older man finally had the audacity to move, slowly stepping back and straightening his expensive tie. He was calm, collected, as if he had been caught in awkward meetings before and knew how to handle them. "Mr. Hayes," he said smoothly, offering a forced smile. "I see we have a misunderstanding here." I snapped my gaze toward him, my fists tightening. "A misunderstanding?" My voice dropped into something dangerous. "You mean the part where I walked in on my wife her boss? Or the part where you actually think I'm going to let this slide?" Charlotte flinched, her face crumpling as she slid off the desk. "Please, just let me explain." I took a step forward, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Explain? You want to explain? Fine. Asterisk explain how long you've been lying to me." Asterisk. Silence. Charlotte looked away, her hands shaking as she frantically buttoned her blouse. She couldn't even meet my eyes. That's when I knew. It wasn't the first time. I turned my glare back to her boss, who was still watching me with a detached air, as if this was an unfortunate inconvenience instead of the complete annihilation of my life. And then he smirked, like he had already won, like I was just another husband whose wife he had conquered. A red haze clouded my vision. Before I even realized what I was doing, My fist collided with his jaw. He stumbled back, crashing against a filing cabinet, knocking a stack of papers onto the floor. Charlotte screamed, but I didn't care. I wasn't done. The impact of my fist against his jaw sent a sickening crack through the room. The bastard staggered backward, clutching his face, his polished arrogance crumbling into something uglier. Shock, pain, and anger. Charlotte screamed, rushing toward me, her hands grabbing at my arm. Benjamin, stop. What the hell are you doing? I jerked away from her touch like it burned. Asterisk, what am I doing? Asterisk. I bellowed, my chest heaving. What the hell were you doing, Charlotte? Should I have knocked first? Given you more time to finish screwing your boss. She flinched as if I had slapped her, but I didn't care. My blood was boiling, my vision tunneling in on the man still reeling from my punch. He straightened slowly, rubbing his jaw, his eyes darkening with something that sent a warning bell ringing in my head. That, he muttered, licking his split lip, was a very bad idea, Mr. Hayes. I clenched my fists, ready to swing again. You think I give a damn? Charlotte shoved herself between us, placing her hands on my chest. Stop it, both of you. Her voice was frantic, her breath ragged. Benjamin, please. This isn't going to fix anything. I let out a cold laugh, shaking my head. Fix anything? I spat. You're right. It won't. Nothing is going to fix this. I gestured around the room, the tangled sheets on the desk, her disheveled clothes, the wreckage of my marriage. I want answers, Charlotte. Now. Her bottom lip trembled, tears brimming in her eyes. I didn't mean for this to happen. Bullshit. She sucked in a sharp breath, her hands tightening into fists. I swear, it wasn't supposed to be like this. I just got in too deep, and a bitter laugh rumbled out of me. Too deep? You mean with him? Mr. Hayes. The bastard finally spoke again, his voice low and deliberate. You're a smart man. You know things can get complicated in marriage. I turned to him, my jaw clenching. Shut your goddamn mouth. He ignored me, adjusting his tie as if I hadn't just punched him. I suggest you think carefully about how you handle this. Emotions can make men act recklessly. Say things, do things, that they later regret. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a warning, a veiled threat. Charlotte's breath hitched, and for the first time, I saw it. Asterisk fear asterisk in her eyes. What the hell was going on? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. What exactly are you suggesting? The boss gave me a slow, knowing smile. I'm saying, Mr. Hayes, that everything has a price, including your silence. I stared at him. He wasn't just trying to save face. He was offering me a bribe. The room felt like it had shrunk, the walls pressing in as the weight of his words settled over me. Including your silence. I blinked, unsure if I had actually heard him right. You're trying to buy me off? My voice was eerily calm, a stark contrast to the chaos raging inside me. The bastard had the nerve to smirk again. I wouldn't put it that way. I see it more as compensation for your trouble. Charlotte gasped. What? No. Gerald. Stop. Gerald. His name was Gerald Stone. A name I had heard her mention in passing so many times before. My mentor is such a brilliant strategist. Benjamin. Gerald expects the best from his employees. Gerald was so impressed with my presentation today. And all along, Gerald had been screwing my wife. I let out a slow breath, my hands still balled into fists. How much? I asked, my tone unreadable. Charlotte's head snapped toward me. Benjamin, what? He studied me for a moment, his gray eyes calculating. 100,000, he said smoothly, as if discussing a business deal. Enough to make this little inconvenience go away. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. That's cute. You actually think my marriage is worth 100 grand? Gerald's smirk faltered. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. I don't want your money. I don't want your fake apologies. What I want is to know how long you've been screwing my wife. Charlotte let out a strangled sob. Benjamin, please. Shut up, Charlotte. I snapped, my patience evaporating. I'm talking to him now. Gerald sighed, running a hand over his jaw where I had punched him. If you're looking for an apology, you won't get one. Your wife came to me, Mr. Hayes, not the other way around. My vision went red. Charlotte gasped. That's not. Oh, don't lie now, sweetheart. Gerald interrupted smoothly. He deserves the truth. I turned to Charlotte, my heart pounding. Tell me, right now. How long? She choked back a sob. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. And then Gerald answered for her. 10 months. A sharp, cold pain lanced through my chest, worse than any physical blow. 10 months. Nearly a year. I had been living a lie for almost a year. Something inside me shattered. I turned away from them both, running a shaky hand through my hair. The rage inside me was suffocating, pressing against my ribs like a vice. If I stayed here a second longer, I might actually kill him. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay in control. Then I looked Charlotte dead in the eye. I want a divorce. Her whole body sagged. No. Benjamin, please. No more lies. No more begging. I cut her off. I'll be sending the papers. I turned to Gerald, my voice cold. And as for you, you better hope I never see you again. And with that, I walked out, leaving my wife, her pathetic lover, and the ruins of my marriage behind. The cold night air hit me like a slap as I stormed out of the office building. My body moved on autopilot, my mind replaying everything I had just witnessed. Charlotte moaning his name, her half-buttoned blouse, the smug way Gerald had named his price for my silence. 10 months. For almost a year, I had kissed her goodbye in the morning, told her I loved her, trusted her. And the whole time she had been running to him. I barely registered the sound of footsteps behind me until Charlotte's frantic voice cut through the haze. Benjamin, please wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. My jaw clenched as I heard her heels clicking closer. I can explain, she gasped, breathless from chasing after me. Please, just listen to me. Slowly, I turned, staring at the woman I had once thought I'd grow old with. The woman I had fought for. Now she stood before me. Mascara streaked down her tear-stained face, her once flawless appearance disheveled from the wreckage she had created. Explain. My voice was hollow, as if I were speaking from somewhere outside my own body. Explain what, Charlotte? How you spent nearly a year lying to me. How you let him touch you. She flinched, hugging herself as if the weight of my words were physically painful. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I let out a bitter laugh. That's what you said inside. What exactly was it supposed to be like? A fun little fling? A game? And then what? You'd come home, kiss me goodnight, and pretend I was enough. Charlotte sobbed, shaking her head violently. No. It wasn't like that, Benjamin. I was lonely. You were always so busy, always focused on work. I felt like I was disappearing, like I wasn't important to you anymore. I stared at her, my stomach twisting in disgust. So your solution to that was to sleep with your boss? I didn't plan for it to happen, she whispered. It just did. A cold rage settled in my bones. No, Charlotte. You chose this. My voice was quiet, but the weight of those words crushed the space between us. Every lie, every stolen moment. You chose him over me. She stepped closer, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away like her touch was poison. I love you, she whispered desperately. Please, Benjamin, we can fix this. I exhaled sharply, looking at her as if for the first time. I felt nothing. Not love. Not hatred. Just emptiness. This marriage is over, I said, my voice steady. I'll be sending the divorce papers. Don't call me. Don't text me. You made your choice. Now live with it. She let out a strangled sob, but I didn't stay to watch her break. I turned and walked away, and this time she didn't follow. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, but my mind was somewhere else. Trapped in that office, in the moment everything shattered. Charlotte's pleas still rang in my ears, but I shut them out. She didn't deserve my thoughts. When I pulled into the driveway of our house, no, not ours anymore, just mine. I didn't move. I sat there, staring at the darkened windows, the home we had built together, the home where I had laughed with her, dreamed with her, trusted her. Now it was just a building, a hollow shell of something that once held meaning. A sharp vibration in my pocket broke the silence. My phone. I pulled it out, my stomach tightening when I saw the name flashing across the screen. Mom. I hesitated before answering. Hey, Mom. Ben. Her voice was warm but laced with concern. Are you okay? I let out a slow breath, pressing my fingers against my forehead. No. Silence. Then, gently, what happened? My throat tightened. I hadn't even begun to process the reality of telling my family. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like speaking them would solidify what I was trying to accept. Charlotte. My voice wavered, but I forced myself to continue. She cheated on me. A sharp inhale on the other end. Oh, sweetheart. It's been going on for almost a year. I continued, my voice turning cold. With her boss. Silence stretched between us. When Mom finally spoke, her voice trembled with barely contained anger. That ungrateful, disgusting little... She stopped herself, breathing heavily. I always had a feeling about her, Ben. I wanted to believe she was good for you, but something always felt off. I swallowed hard. I wanted to argue, but deep down, a part of me had ignored the signs. I'm divorcing her, I said flatly. Saying it out loud made it real. I walked out. I'm done. I'm proud of you. Her voice was firm. And I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I don't even know what to feel anymore, Mom. You don't have to figure it out right now, she said softly. Just know you don't have to go through this alone. The knot in my chest loosened just a little. Come home for a few days, she offered. You don't need to be in that house right now. I hesitated. The thought of walking inside, being surrounded by memories of us, of her, made my skin crawl. I'll pack a bag, I murmured. Good. Mom's voice softened. We love you, Ben. We'll get through this. For the first time that night, I felt something close to relief. Thanks, Mom. I hung up and stepped out of the car. I wasn't just leaving Charlotte. I was leaving us. And maybe that was the best thing I could do. The house felt different when I stepped inside, hollow like someone had drained all the life from it. The air was thick, suffocating, steeped in memories that now felt like someone else's. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt real. The couch where Charlotte and I had spent lazy Sunday mornings, wrapped in blankets, whispering about our future. The dining table where she had laughed over candlelit dinners, swearing she'd love me forever. The framed wedding photos on the wall, static, frozen moments of a life that didn't exist anymore. A sick feeling crawled up my spine as I walked through the living room. My gaze landed on a picture from our honeymoon in Maui. Charlotte, wearing that blue sundress I loved, her arms wrapped around me as the ocean stretched behind us. We looked happy. I looked at that man, and wondered if he had any idea how doomed he was. I yanked the frame off the mantel and stared at it for a long second. Then, without thinking, I hurled it across the room. The glass shattered against the floor, the pieces scattering like fragments of our broken vows. My breathing was uneven as I stood there, fists clenched. What the hell am I doing? I forced myself to move. Upstairs. Pack a bag. Get out. The bedroom was the worst. The bed was still unmade from that morning. The sheets slightly wrinkled, the pillows stacked just the way Charlotte liked them. Her robe was draped over the chair in the corner, her perfume lingering in the air. It made my stomach turn. This had been our space, where we whispered secrets in the dark, where she curled up against me on cold nights, where I thought we were safe from the world. But it was all a goddamn lie. I grabbed my suitcase from the closet and threw it open on the bed. Clothes. Essentials. That's all I needed. I stuffed shirts, jeans, and underwear inside without caring if they were folded. I just needed to leave. Then something caught my eye. Her nightstand drawer was open just a crack. Charlotte was never careless with that drawer. A sharp unease settled over me. Slowly, I reached out and pulled it open. Inside was a sleek black box, small and elegant. A chill ran down my spine as I lifted the lid. A men's watch, not mine. My breath hitched. The watch was expensive, heavy, with a silver band and a dark blue face. It looked new. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands, my fingers gripping the cold metal so tightly they ached. Then I saw the engraving on the back. Jesus! My whole body went numb. Gerald Stone. A deep, raw sickness twisted in my gut. She had kept his watch in our home, in our bedroom, in the drawer beside the bed we had shared for years. My vision blurred with rage. I clenched the watch in my fist, breathing hard. Asterisk, this wasn't a fling. This wasn't some mistake. This was a choice. Asterisk. My mind raced, rewinding through the last few months, searching for moments that suddenly made sense. The nights she worked late, the way she guarded her phone, the scent of cologne on her clothes that I had brushed off as being from a coworker, the way she had started dressing just a little different, paying extra attention to her hair, her perfume, her lingerie, things I had stupidly assumed were for me. No, she had been his long before I caught them in that office. A white-hot fury surged through me, so overpowering it felt like my veins were burning. I needed to destroy something. My eyes landed on the lamp beside the bed. Before I could think, I grabbed it and hurled it at the wall with everything I had. The crash was deafening. The ceramic base exploded into 1,000 pieces, shards skittering across the floor. The lampshade crumpled like a discarded secret, and for the first time that night, the silence in the house felt shattered, just like everything else in my life. I stood there, panting, my heart slamming against my ribs. The rage didn't subside. It was still clawing at my insides, demanding more. I wanted to rip the sheets off the bed, smash every piece of furniture in this godforsaken room, burn the whole damn house to the ground. But what was the point? It wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't erase the image of Charlotte moaning another man's name. It wouldn't erase the fact that she had chosen to betray me. Not once, not twice, but for nearly a year. My fingers unclenched, and the watch slipped from my grasp, landing on the bed with a dull thud. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. Then I picked it up again, walked into the bathroom, and dropped it into the toilet. I watched it sink to the bottom, the symbol of their affair drowning under cold, still water. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. I swallowed hard and turned back to my suitcase. I zipped it shut, grabbed my keys and stormed downstairs. I didn't look back. Let the ghosts of our marriage haunt this house. I was done. I walked out the door, locking it behind me, sealing away everything that had once been us. And this time I wasn't coming back. The drive to my parents' house was silent, except for the dull hum of the engine. I didn't bother turning on the radio. Nothing could drown out the noise inside my head. The memories, the rage, the questions I'd never get real answers to. The streetlights blurred past in streaks of gold, but my mind was stuck in the past. I kept seeing Charlotte's face, the way her expression crumbled when I told her it was over, the way she reached for me, as if her touch could undo the wreckage she had caused. But worst of all, I saw her in that office, moaning his name. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I had spent years loving her, trusting her, building a life with her, only to find out I had been nothing more than a fool. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, my chest felt hollow, like my body had burned through every ounce of emotion, leaving only exhaustion behind. The porch light was on, casting a soft glow against the dark night. I killed the engine but didn't move. For the first time since storming out of Charlotte's office, a terrifying thought hit me. What the hell happens now? I had no home, no marriage, nothing. The weight of it pressed down on me, suffocating. I leaned back against the headrest, closing my eyes. A sharp knock on the window made me jolt. I turned to see my mom peering through the glass, worry etched into her features. I hadn't even called to tell her I was on my way. But of course she knew. She always knew. I sighed and opened the door. She pulled me into a hug before I even had both feet on the ground. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, her arms tight around me. "I'm so sorry." I stood stiffly at first, my body still locked in fight mode, but slowly, I let myself sink into the warmth of her embrace. For the first time in hours, I wasn't alone. She pulled back, looking me over. "You look like hell." I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "I feel worse." She cupped my face briefly before motioning toward the house. "Come inside. Your father's still awake." I followed her in, the familiar scent of home wrapping around me. It had been years since I last spent the night here. Back when life was simple. Back when I believed love was forever. My dad was sitting in his recliner, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up as I entered, his face a mixture of sympathy and quiet anger. "Heard what happened?" he said, setting his book down. "You holding up?" I ran a hand through my hair and exhaled. "Not really." He nodded like he expected that answer. "Good." I frowned. "Good." Dad leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "Means you're still human. Means you still feel." I didn't have the energy to argue. I collapsed onto the couch, rubbing my temples. "I don't know what to do next," I admitted. "I thought I had everything figured out. And now," Mom sat beside me, placing a gentle hand on my knee. "Now you start over." I let out a bitter laugh. "How? Where do I even begin?" Dad spoke up, his voice steady. "First, you get that divorce. And then, you take it one day at a time. You don't let her destroy you, son. You survive." Survive? I wasn't sure if I could. But as I sat there, surrounded by the only people who had never lied to me, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could try. Morning came too soon. I barely slept, my mind looping through the same scenes. Charlotte's betrayal, Gerald's smug face, the life I thought I had crumbling in my hands. My body felt heavy, like I had been carrying the weight of this nightmare for years instead of just a single night. When I finally forced myself out of bed, the smell of coffee pulled me toward the kitchen. Mom was at the stove, humming softly as she flipped pancakes, trying to pretend like today was normal. Dad sat at the table, reading the newspaper, though I could tell from the way he kept glancing at me that his focus wasn't on the headlines. "Eat," Mom said, placing a plate in front of me. "You look like you haven't had a real meal in days." I wanted to tell her I wasn't hungry, but I knew better. Mom's love language was food, and rejecting it would be like rejecting comfort itself. So I took a bite, even though it tasted like nothing. Dad folded the paper and leaned back in his chair. "What's your plan?" I swallowed, setting my fork down. "I'm filing today." Mom sucked in a quiet breath. Dad nodded. "Good. You want me to go with you?" I shook my head. "I need to do this alone." He studied me for a long moment, then simply said, "Proud of you, son." The words settled something deep inside me. An hour later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, staring at a stack of papers that would officially end my marriage. "This should be straightforward," the attorney, Mr. Lawson, was saying. "North Carolina is a no-fault divorce state. Given the circumstances, you have grounds for adultery, but honestly, it won't change much in terms of assets." I nodded stiffly, barely hearing him. It wasn't about assets. It was about ending this. Lawson pushed a pen toward me. "You can take some time to think it over, but I don't need time." I grabbed the pen and signed. Each stroke of ink felt like sealing a wound shut. I had loved Charlotte with everything in me. I had given her my heart, my trust, my future. And now, with this signature, I was erasing her from my life. When I slid the papers back across the desk, my hands didn't even shake. It was done. I walked out of the lawyer's office feeling lighter, but not in the way I had hoped. There was no relief. No catharsis. Just emptiness. The papers were filed. The wheels of the divorce were in motion. Soon, Charlotte would be nothing more than a name on a legal document, a chapter one could close and never reopen. But there was still one last thing left to do. I needed to see her. Not to talk. Not to fight. But to make sure she understood. Asterisk, this was final. Asterisk. When I pulled into our driveway. Asterisk, no. Not ours anymore. Just hers. Asterisk. I felt nothing. I had spent years coming home to this house. Eager to see her. Eager to be in the place where we built our life. Now, I just wanted to get this over with. I stepped out of the car, walking toward the front door with purpose. Every footstep felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. I was past that now. I knocked once, sharp and deliberate. A few moments passed before the door cracked open. Charlotte stood there, looking wrecked. Her once perfect hair was tangled, her skin pale, and her eyes, those green eyes that once held so much love, were swollen and red from crying. She wore one of my old college sweatshirts, the fabric hanging loosely on her thin frame. The same sweatshirt she used to steal from my drawer when she was cold, when she curled up against me on the couch, when she whispered that she loved me. But the woman in front of me wasn't my Charlotte anymore. She was someone I didn't recognize. Her lips parted slightly, as if she had been expecting me but still wasn't prepared to face me. "Benjamin?" she breathed, her voice hoarse, like she had been saying my name in the dark for hours, waiting for me to appear. I didn't let her finish. I held up the envelope, my grip firm. "Divorce papers." She flinched as if I had struck her. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, taking the envelope from my hands. For a moment, she just stared at it, running her fingertips along the edge like she was trying to convince herself it wasn't real. "Already?" she whispered. "What did you expect?" My voice was flat, emotionless. Charlotte blinked rapidly, fresh tears pooling in her eyes. Her lips quivered, but she bit down on them, as if trying to keep herself from breaking apart completely. For a split second, I saw something in her expression, something almost genuine. Regret. Not just for getting caught. Not just for losing the comfort of our marriage. But for losing me. She opened her mouth, and for a brief moment, I thought she was going to beg again. Tell me she could change, that we could fix this. But the words never came. Instead, she just nodded, holding the papers to her chest like they were a weight she suddenly couldn't bear. "I'll sign them," she murmured. I exhaled sharply, looking away. This was it. The end. I turned to leave, my hand already reaching for the car door when she spoke again. "I miss you." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more weight than anything she had ever said before. I froze. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the ground, my heart hammering against my ribs. The old me, the one who had loved her with everything he had, the one who would have fought for her, forgiven her, begged for her to stay, might have turned around, might have let those words sink in, might have let her pull me back in. But I wasn't that man anymore. I forced myself to look over my shoulder, meeting her gaze one last time. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "You should have thought about that," I said quietly, my voice steady, final. "Before you chose him." And with that, I walked away. Charlotte didn't chase me. She didn't call my name. She just stood there, clutching those divorce papers like they were the only thing left of us. And maybe they were. The road stretched ahead, long and endless, but for the first time in weeks, I wasn't looking back. Charlotte was gone. Not just from my house, not just from my bed, but from me. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what I needed. I drove for miles, the city fading in my rearview mirror, replaced by open roads and quiet skies. The weight in my chest hadn't disappeared, but it was shifting, becoming something else. Something lighter. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was free. The divorce papers were just ink and signatures, but the real ending had happened long before I walked out that door. I had spent years thinking Charlotte was my home, my forever. I had built my life around her, never questioning if she deserved the love I gave so freely. Now I knew. She didn't. And that was her burden to carry, not mine. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. A message from Peter. "Proud of you, man. Let's grab a drink soon. First round's on me." I smirked, shaking my head. A drink sounded good. Hell, a fresh start sounded even better. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I didn't feel trapped in the wreckage of what Charlotte had done. I just felt alive. And as the sun dipped lower in the sky, I gripped the wheel a little tighter, pressed down on the gas, and drove toward whatever came next.